Hello? Sorry. What is identity? In its basic definition, identity is the characteristics that make up who we are. Family, religion, culture, money, appearance. We find that this encompasses so many complex ideas and concepts that crosses, interlinks, contradicts, and merges with each other to form each individual. The reason I say this today is because, just like any of these aspects, identifying as an LGBTQ+ member is just another factor. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and the little plus sign at the end that stands for the many other sexualities and genders. With an increasing number of people identifying as a member of the LGBTQ+ community, there is rising need to open more conversations about this. It crosses with family, interlinks with love, contradicts society, and merges with all of these aspects to make you. Now, before I begin my talk, I want to be honest here. I am a coward. You will find a part of this speech where I struggle to continue. My breathing will become erratic, and I will fight back tears. Because despite practicing in front of my mirror countless of times, what I see in a reflection isn't me, but a collective identity of LGBTQ+ youth. As you listen to our anonymous stories, you will find that they stem from places of shame, hatred, and hopelessness, yet also happiness, liberation, and love. We stay nameless because, despite experiencing the full spectrum of human emotions, I want to say that we're just like you, just like any other human being living life as it is. But we don't. We don't have that luxury to be so carefree. We remain vigilant at every passing conversation, every turn of the sidewalk, every relationship ever forged. We continually ask ourselves, will this person be okay if I came out to them? Does this stranger think I'm weird? Do I fit in? As a consequence of societal systems of binary gender norms, history, and at times, religious scriptures, we find that we have little to no freedom to express ourselves in our queer identity. So I tell my story with ours because we want you to see, hear, and feel what it is like to be an LGBTQ+ youth in today's society. So I begin my story as a young child in Nepal. Every day I came to school making sure that my friends did not see me with my brother. For years, I tried not to associate with him. Outcasted, everyone in our small Nepali community knew that he was a gay. While mothers commended mine for being so brave for accepting him, their children continuously threatened and assault him in school. Now, this experience is not unique to just my brother, but happens all around the world. In Thailand, for example, despite its relatively friendly demeanor towards LGBTQ+ people, a major study found that half of LGBTQ+ youth have reported being bullied, increasing dropout, mental, and physical problems. Halfway across the globe, Mental Health America reports that LGBTQ+ youth are twice as likely to get bullied, risking their mental health and education. Now, I was introduced to the LGBTQ+ community through the bloodshed and tears it brought to my brother. Yet while I stood by the sidelines, I made sure to close both of my eyes because maybe then he would cease to exist. I remember being so resentful. It was this hot, red, angry ball directed at no one. Every day, I catch the uncomfortable glances around us. Every day, I laugh off jokes made at the expense of him. Every day, this anger grew. I hated how his problem of being queer was bleeding into me, into my family. Yet, as I grew up, I found myself researching about it more often. I learned the different terminologies. I learned the intersectionality with different aspects of identity. I learned the global struggle for rights and respect. This sobered me. It helped put feelings to words I did not know how to describe. And as I mend our relationship now, as I watch him grow into someone who isn't just gay, but who is a whole person whom I love and adore, I ask myself, if this love between siblings could have been possible if I did not accept him. My brother's sexuality does not define him, but society made it so that it did. Though he has left his school now, the nature of this community remains. Though I have left his school now, I embrace him for whoever he is and whatever he wishes to be. While some are fortunate enough to break free from the societal confinements placed against LGBTQ+ people, others experience a more severe, systematic persecution so ingrained within the culture of the people through the governed state that many people live their whole lives without the freedom of expressing their queer identity. So I continue my story, growing up in the Middle Eastern and North African region. I know that my country does not condone people like me. I kept my sexuality well hidden in a box, chained by a very tangible fear of my life. I grew up learning how to say nonchalant when my father speaks of the gay fairy tale dreams and how did you just move to the US to stop tainting the country. Now this is a common belief here. For I am not only a sin and a blasphemy, but also an object of propaganda from the West to dissuade Muslims from their faith. Internally, I was ashamed that I believed that I too was a filth to my country, ashamed that I did not have the luxury or the right to come in terms with my sexuality. I know of friends and family who would willingly turn any queer person in. Murders and incarcerations litter the news. There is no safety for LGBTQ+ people here. Yet despite this and the undeniable fact that if I were to be openly queer, I would be killed on sight. I cannot bring myself to hate my country or its people. The persistence of the heteronormativity and the binary gender norms is not because of the Quran like many believe, but it is the effect of post-colonialism and their imposed laws. 150 years ago, LGBTQ+ people were openly accepted in my country. There was no need for me to carve pieces of myself out only to present what is socially acceptable. Yet, while my country becomes increasingly homophobic, European countries ignore the fact that they play a role in our society, only to call it savage and immoral. This phenomenon from the post-colonialism effect is common in the Southern Hemisphere. In India, for example, hijra is a semi-sacred third gender for people who were neither completely male or female. They have a vast history in Hindu culture, dating back to ancient Hindu texts. They were invited to bestow blessings during auspicious events such as weddings and childbirths. During the British colonial rule, however, they were violently incarcerated under official anti-hijra laws meant to exterminate these criminal tribes which posed contagion and contamination to the British colonizers. Now, in modern India, despite surviving against total colonial extinction, despite its long history in the Hindu culture, they triumph. Yet similarly to the transgender community around the world, they face some of the worst living circumstances. They live at the fringes of society, expelled from their home, forced to beg and sell their bodies as sex workers. The mark of being a hijra follows them wherever they go, to schools, to hospitals, to work. Violence against them often occurs in broad daylight. Stigmatization against the hijra community continues as a legacy of British colonial rule. Stigmatization against LGBTQ+ people continues as a legacy of conventional mindsets who are unwilling to listen to the people which the society impacts. In turn, I often think of this when I question my identity as a queer Muslim person. How can I be both Muslim and queer? How do I reconcile these two extremely contradictory concepts? The answer to me is simple. Religion is a personal, intimate journey privy to others. It is a conversation only between you and God. I know that I was created this way. So answer me this. How does being queer, which is something that I was created with, contradict the Creator's wish? In another narrative, as a North American non-binary person, despite living in one of the most liberally acclaimed countries, I still face microaggressions in my everyday life. Like darts to a board, microaggressions are defined as the daily commonplace verbal, behavioral attitudes that convey derogatory, hostile, and negative meaning towards stigmatized groups of people. In conversations, when people subconsciously or consciously choose to misgender me, in bathroom and changing rooms, when I am denied entry because they are unable to identify my gender. While some believe that microaggressions are the desperate attempts to find discrimination in seemingly harmful words and phrases, I argue that others know exactly what it is like to be discriminated. And with that, are they able to find similar attitudes that exclude and degrade in your words and phrases? Like darts to a board, Chester M. Pierce, a Harvard professor, calls this a cumulative burden of a lifetime. This is the experience, the reality that denies the emotions and thoughts of an LGBTQ+ person. I could go on to talk about the naturalness and the fluidity of our sexuality and gender in ancient civilizations that evidences how the LGBTQ+ community is not a modern construct. In fact, we have been here since the dawn of time. I could talk about the ancient Egyptians who venerated the third gender, illustrating deities that were neither completely male or female, such as the goddess of motherhood, Mut, or the goddess of war and healing, Sekhmet, or of the openly gay monarch led by King Mwanga II of ancient Uganda. But I won't, because the list is too long. The point here is not to blame the Western import of homophobia, as the Ugandan president Yoweri Museveni has called it. The real point here is to acknowledge that despite the history that spans back to archaic times and stretches across the globe, that limitations for LGBTQ+ people still persists in today's society. Straying from the conventional path of a cis heterosexual person, of conventional ideas of sexuality and gender, leads us down a path of systematic and societal pressure so great that it bestows hardships and trauma for the individual. And sometimes the hardships that we face are so grave that we end up never being able to find peace in our life. One last story I'd like to share to really illustrate this is of someone who I largely look up to, my older sibling. They are the most masochistic spice lover that you will ever meet in your life. Despite the clear pain that they're in, they've shown me true perseverance of an LGBTQ+ person. As a non-conforming person, also known as a non-binary person, they define their sexuality as bisexual, but 99.99% leaning towards women. They've shown me that sexuality and gender is not a binary system like we think it is. In fact, borrowing words from a transgender woman from the Philippines, Gina Rosero, she calls sexuality and gender as a mutable, mysterious, and enigmatic entity. In turn, I would like to encourage you, my dear audience, to start a conversation, be it with your friends, family, strangers, or even yourself. Because I have been urged to include the proper definitions of all the LGBTQ+ terms used in this talk. But I argue that there is a whole world for you out there to explore. Exhaustive lists of articles, podcasts to listen to, people to talk to. The learning does not begin with us telling you, it begins with your desire to understand us. What do you know about the LGBTQ+ people? What more do you need to know? What are the actions you have to take to ensure that people feel comfortable to express themselves in their entire identity. Because as I've interviewed multiple LGBTQ plus people, I finish with one question. What does your piece look like? What does your piece of identity look like to you? To this question, every single one of them answered, I don't know. I have never thought about it. Thank you.